All living things grow. It is one of the characteristics of what it means to be alive. And growth means change. You end one way of being and you enter a new one. Sometimes the change is radical, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly or a child learning to walk. But other times, the change is slow, and you don't even realize you've grown until you look back and are like, whoa, I've come a long way. Of course, sometimes you do know when you're in the midst of growth. I remember a time when I was going through a very difficult experience and was processing it with a wise and beloved colleague. Dawn, she said, it sounds like you're in the middle of an AFGE. A what? I asked. An AFGE, another fracking growth experience. Only she didn't say fracking. Now, you may also have heard of AFGOs, growth opportunities, when the potential is there and you have to decide whether to take it or not. If you do, an AFGO can become an AFGE, but they don't always. Sometimes a growth opportunity presents itself and you're like, nope, not for me. Or maybe, not right now. And sometimes we miss a growth opportunity because we're scared of what we will lose, scared that we might not make it to the other side, scared because change is hard and different. And of course, sometimes growth happens whether we want it to or not, no matter how scared or resistant we are. Because all living things grow. So perhaps it isn't too surprising that our organizations, our institutions, our groups, our families, all of these clusters of living human beings, they have a similar experience. They also have growth opportunities that may or may not turn into growth experiences, AFGOs that may or may not become AFGEs. And believe it or not, this applies to our congregations as well. In his book, More Than Numbers, The Way Churches Grow, Lauren Mead outlined 4 dimensions of growth for congregations and states that a lively, vital congregation will most likely be growing in at least one of these 4 dimensions. Mead says that healthy congregations, living congregations, can grow numerically, organically, incarnationally, or maturationally. And to that, more recently, the Unitarian Universalist Association added that congregations can also grow connectionally. But what does all this mean? And what does it mean here at UUI at this specific moment in time? Let's dig in a little together. So once upon a time, when someone asked, is your church growing? They only meant one thing: numeric growth. The idea was that thriving churches would grow in membership numbers, or Sunday worship attendance, or children and youth religious education attendance, or adult religious education attendance. Numeric growth can also mean the size of a congregation's budget or number of activities that it offers. Numeric growth was held as the gold standard for a long time, and it was something that some congregations even began to almost worship themselves. They felt like if they weren't growing numerically, they weren't succeeding, which is why Mead's other 3 areas of growth and the one the UUA added are so important to focus on as well. But right now, I just want to focus on this numeric growth. Here at UUI, we just welcomed a slew of new members a few weeks ago, and the amount of money given for the annual pledge drive has increased each year for the past 7 years, including during a pandemic and a ministerial transition. And the RE program is growing. There is so much numeric growth happening here. Now, these days, most churches are not growing numerically. All around the country, churches are shrinking, they're dying, they're declining, they're closing. Now, some churches don't grow numerically because they just don't get very many visitors, because people aren't going to church the way they used to. But UUI isn't like that. We get a lot of visitors, and some stay and learn more because this is such a lively, vibrant place with so much going on. UUI is growing in other ways too, as you'll see in a minute. Other churches don't grow numerically because they are set in patterns of behavior that keep the numbers down. They may see a large turnover of people leaving the church after just a few years because the culture of the congregation is prohibiting them to connect or engage the way they would like to. For a numerically growing congregation, the healthiest thing to do is to adapt, to change, to welcome the AFGO that numeric growth presents, and turn it into an AFGI. If not, that growth can turn into decline, and the congregation may no longer continue to be a healthy, vital, living organism. Now, embracing numeric growth when it's happening often necessitates another kind of growth in the congregation. The second kind, organic growth. What the heck does that mean? This means institutional development. Organic growth is the growth of a congregation as a functioning community. Is the congregation able to sustainably maintain itself as a living organism and as an institution that can engage with the world around it? Organic growth involves having healthy internal organizational systems that provide the foundation for a congregation's ministry, such as clear and updated policies and processes, intentional recruitment and succession planning for leaders, evaluation mechanisms for programs, volunteers, and for paid staff, and practices that deal with conflict openly and honestly. For most of its nearly 50-year history, UUI has been what is called a pastoral-sized congregation. So I'm going to go a little bit into size theory, congregational size theory here, bear with me. So UUI has mostly been pastoral size. In congregations of this size category, the community where people embrace mutual support and spirit is vital to the identity of the congregation and is usually a point of pride. This size congregation generally has a minister, pastor, so pastoral, who likely has a personal relationship with each member in the congregation and is the main source of pastoral care and leadership. And the minister is usually at the center of new programs and new member incorporation. In a pastoral-sized congregation, everyone expects to be involved in decision-making, usually through town hall meetings or surveys. And processes are generally informal. Oh, just go talk to so-and-so, they know how to make that happen. Though there may be a more formal structure of committee heads that are charged by the board. Members in this size congregation often take turns filling the leadership position, so it's a core group of people who keep rotating through different positions in the congregation. Does this sound at all familiar? But UUI has been on the cusp of entering the next size category for a number of years, what is called a program church. And UUI has developed many of the characteristics of this size category too. In a program church, there are multiple small communities within a larger community, and they all rely on a common mission and vision to create a bonded congregation. The minister must also now function in an administrative role, often supervising several staff. And so pastoral care is offered through a team, not just the minister. The minister is also a coach to the leaders, helping to develop shared ministry and creating leadership development opportunities for the many lay leaders. And the minister usually does not have a one-on-one relationship with everyone in the congregation because it has gotten to be too large. In a program church, formal processes are needed in just about every facet of the church. The laity empowers their leaders, like the board, to make decisions in a hopefully trustful relationship. Now, a person joins a program-sized congregation because of and through the many varied programs which are provided and may not know everybody, and so that's a change from the pastoral size. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. We have so many programs here. So as you can probably tell, and as I've already said multiple times, UUI is actually a blend of the pastoral and program-sized congregations. It's what's called a transitional-sized church. In this size category, power and authority are becoming more dispersed, but this creates tensions in longer-term members who are used to doing things in a certain way. There's also tension between staff and lay leaders because the church is too big to be entirely lay-led, but too small to fully fund the staff that it relies on to fully move into being the program-sized church. Transitional-sized churches can be a very uncomfortable size category for a congregation to be in for very long, and often when faced with this transition, a congregation must intentionally decide to either keep growing, to put new processes and procedures that will create a stable foundation for continued growth, or not. But if they don't keep growing, they can begin to decline unless they are intentional about something like a church plant. That decline may come from conflict. The decline may come from a culture shift that becomes less welcoming. All living things grow. And so a third area of growth for a congregation is called incarnational growth. We don't use the word incarnational a whole lot in Unitarian Universalism, but this means, how do we embody our faith? We are growing. Incarnational growth means, how are we embodying our faith? This means the ability to take the meanings and values of our faith as Unitarian Universalists and make them real in the world. The congregation grows in its ability to socially incarnate what the Unitarian Universalist faith is about. Incarnational growth addresses questions like, what are the outputs? What's the impact of this congregation's ministry? What is it that the congregation seeks to do in the world, to be in the world? What are the good works that we are doing to make a congregation, the world, a better place? I think UUI is growing here too. The solar panels and the drive towards green sanctuary, the embrace of the transgender inclusion in congregations course, the various social justice teams, these are all ways that UUI is growing incarnationally. But incarnational growth is not sustainable unless there's organic growth as well. The congregation that is growing incarnationally will have a clear vision of who they want to be in the world, and a clear mission that they are driving towards. And as the church continues to grow incarnationally, the mission and vision need to be revisited and revitalized. One of the things that the board here is talking about doing is potentially reviewing the mission and vision of UUI. The current one is 11 years old at this point, and y'all have grown in all sorts of ways. You're not the same congregation that you were 11 years ago. This may be an area for us to explore together during this interim time, because knowing your mission will help you to attract the next right minister. And the fourth area of growth that Mead identified is maturational growth. This means growth in the stature and religious maturity of each member, as well as growth in the ability to nurture and to allow yourselves to be nurtured. Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams wrote that church exists so that we can practice being better humans. I love this. Church exists so that we can practice being better humans. And maturational growth is how we practice that. UUI's adult and religious education programs, our chalice circles, our pagan collective, these are all programs that support the maturational growth of a congregation, the behavioral covenant as well. This is an exciting time, too, for UUI because you have a new adult religious education committee that's going to be looking at other ways to provide opportunities for the congregation to continue to engage in this kind of growth. I have appreciated the maturational health and growth of UUI. It has been a warm and welcoming place as a minister to experience, and I am just so honored to be with you through this time. Maturational growth is also where our understanding of covenant resides. In her essay, Messy and Imperfect Beloved Community, religious educator Layla Ibrahim reminds us that again and again, we are called to choose to commit ourselves to building a more just, more diverse, and yet ever messy and imperfect beloved community. It takes maturity to be able to stay in community, to make mistakes, to begin again in love when we stumble through, when we disagree, when we annoy each other and flake out with each other, to be in covenant with each other, to call one another back into covenant, and to allow ourselves to be called back into covenant. This takes maturity that we are not born with, but that will grow when we nurture it. Today, after the service, the transition team will be leading Harmony Through History, an event where the congregation will get a chance to share your experiences of the congregation in the last 10-ish years. The goal of this event is to support the continued maturational growth of the congregation by having you share your experiences with one another, even though they may be radically different. Now, finally, to these original four, the UUA recently added connectional growth. Growing connectionally means a congregation is expanding their awareness of the importance and relevance of connections with other organizations, that the congregation is not a lone wolf. Connectional growth can come from our relationship with other UU congregations, with the region, and with our larger Unitarian Universalist Association. When we partner with other congregations for Pride festivities, that is connectional growth. The number of folks who participated in the Mid-America Regional Assembly, if you participated, could you raise your hand real quick? We had a number of folks. And the number of people who plan on participating in this year's online-only National UUA General Assembly. If you're planning on attending General Assembly online this year, could you raise your hand? Got some overlap there too, right? This is all connectional growth. And it is connectional growth when we work with community partners and organizations like Faith in Place and the Center for Congregations. Now, I heard a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard a rumor that someone recently asked, when did UUI decide to grow? As a lively, vibrant, thriving congregation, you just are growing. In fact, I believe that UUI is growing in some ways quickly and in some ways slowly in all of these categories, numerically, organically, incarnationally, maturationally, and connectionally. And that is a lot. It can feel overwhelming. Change is different and often scary. It is a growth opportunity, but only you, collectively, can decide whether you're going to turn it into a growth experience. Do you want to continue to be a living, thriving, vital, vibrant congregation? I'm pretty sure you do. And this means turning the AFGO into an AFGI, because all living things grow. May we grow together with love, with patience, with kindness, and with faith. May it be so. May we Make it so.